you have to trust your peers and in business to double check them.
Hello everybody, this is Value.Tokenized with Masha and Zeni. Unverified and registered financial advisors, as well as low-quality projects, are the main reasons for the lack of trust in the industry right now. Constantin Kogan, partner at BitBull Capital and Chief Business Officer at advisor verification service ABOTMI, will tell us about how the industry can join forces to tackle this issue. Hi, Constantin. Thank you very much for joining us here at Value.Tokenized. Can you please start by introducing yourself and telling a bit about your business?
Thank you for having me. And yeah, in few words, so my name is Constantin Kogan. So right now I live and reside in New York, and I'm being active participant in digital asset revolution, I would call it this way. I started my journey since 2012. It's same, I think, as a lot of us, just got into this rabbit hole of Bitcoin, just my good friend who's a pretty tech savvy and talented entrepreneur. He just advised me to purchase, a few commodities. That's how I perceived it. I never thought about it like, the revolutionary part of the crypto asset itself, right? But yeah, I started from buying 5 of them back then, and then when it appreciated 100% and in a very short term, I realized, well, that's exciting. So then it took me 2 years basically to learn more and educate myself on what it really is, I'm being very frankly, I haven't understood in the beginning. It took a lot of time, and back then, if you remember, there was only forums and Reddit and Bitcoin talk. There's not a lot of information even. With my good friend and partner in business, we launched one of the first, now we can call it decentralized application. Back then it was the startup, right? Which is directly linked to digital assets. And yeah, that was an interesting experience. And then I moved to New York. So originally I'm from Kiev. I was born and raised in Ukraine, traveled a lot, lived a little bit in Paris, a little bit in Tel Aviv. But at the end of the day, and now I'm here in New York, and I'm happily here for 5 years. I'm a partner in BitBull Capital, which is the first crypto fund of funds, and also right now on the board of directors of ABOTMI, which is an investor protection platform. In essence, you can think about it as a professional network that connects investors to digital asset advisors. I'm happy to share more about the platform, about the value proposition.
Okay, and I think you've been mostly known in the community and the industry on the whole for also for your field research on the smart securities that you have been conducting, and you have been communicating with all the major players about that. And can you tell us a little bit more about this research and what are the main results that you have seen by far?
Sure. Well, lately, I think I have to bring a little bit more context. I'm also involved in a big tokenization project, as we call it. Some people call it a security token offering, like smart securities, digital asset securities. So that's why I was also involved for more than half a year of very in-depth research of all the third-party providers. It's important to understand what is happening, I think, generally in the market, right? When we're doing research, I think for any issuer, for any business owner who would love to tokenize their company, their fund, or their real estate property, right? So when they started, for me, it was easier because I was kind of inside of the entire community. But when you're talking about the person who doesn't have necessarily the context of the difference between the Bitcoin and digital security, let's say, or just an ICO and an STO, or sometimes we know that in the industry people are confusing these two things, right? So in my case, I really understood where to go and who to ask immediately. Most of the research I did, I've spoke to the compliance players in the market and people who actually conduct the issuance, and they provide a platform for this. To give you an example, again, not to disclose all the names, but we know we know the big players in the market, who did some real case scenarios, tokenization, securitized, TokenSoft, Fluidity, Swarm, Polymath, etc. So the list, Securrency, and we spoke also with a lot of custody providers, and there's a big question, as you know, in the industry, whether we need custody for this asset or not, right? Which is a very interesting topic. We can get into it later. Then obviously we spoke with a lot of lawyers, because you want to make sure that the tax side and the legal side is 100% compliant in the jurisdiction where you're starting your offering. And obviously obviously what's more important is to make sure it's compliant with in all the jurisdictions where your investors are. So we spoke to legal counsels in each country. We were planning to distribute the issuance, and generally trying to understand how the marketplace work. So spoke with a lot of people who are in tech side, spoke with people who are transfer agents, and obviously the secondary market platforms. We also know that there's not a lot of the players right now. Also, you can count them on, probably in in numbers, it's T0, Open Finance, ShareSpost, etc. Now Archax is coming in. There are a few other big players like Gibraltar, and other ones, but again, not a lot of them. But just to understand, it's not important in the beginning, but just to understand what are their requirements towards the actual technical aspects of the digital asset itself, whether it's ERC20 or C1400 or C777 or whatever. And that's important. So I try to due diligence all of the players to understand what are their add value, right? And how can they help issuers? That helped a lot to see the big picture, what are the inefficiencies? Yeah, that's in few words.
And we recently spoke to your friend Jeffrey Vernick, and in his opinion, the industry is focusing not on the right thing right now, just aiming and chasing all the security token standards. But what is really important is to make the investor interested, show the real benefit for investors, and make investors trust you. And we really see a lack of this in the market. So how do you see the situation, and what, in your opinion, we need to do to get actual investor interest in tokenized securities?
So yeah, first of all, I love Jeffrey. I respect him as a personality, as a leader, as a business person. But we do not always agree on a few things, in terms of even the vision, right? So you see, I'm not a maximalist per se, either in Bitcoin or other alternative coins like Ether or others, right? So I do believe that the truth, the actual essence is somewhere in the middle, right? So there is this view that we have to basically stick to Bitcoin only. This is the digital gold, and everything else is nonsense, and it's not real. It's not even it basically undermines the idea of decentralization and distributed ledger technologies, which I honestly don't fully agree with. And the reason is why it's all about adoption. I'm trying to be here very realistic. At the end of the day, we as an industry, we haven't produced a lot of, I would say, real use case scenarios for how to improve people's life. You see, it's always the perception of the people are around crypto as a money laundering machine, or a lot of scams, or a lot of or purely fintech solutions, right? But we do not understand that it's a lot more than that. But the reason why it's so it's perceived in such manner, because a lot of people just don't have enough education, right? So and I do believe that somewhere in the middle between the evolution to digital securities, which is the main difference there, legal and compliant digitized securities. Again, the key word is security. So I think somewhere in the middle we will meet the truth. And to give you a more practical example, I've recently heard about that on 20th of March. There was Barron's Top Independent Advisor Summit, and it was in Salt Lake City. And one of the top firms were present there, like Bitwise Investment, Grayscale Investments, VanEck, Fidelity Digital Assets, Pantera, etc. And it was interesting because they presented it to the group, and there was about 150 top financial advisors and influencers in the United States, and people who are like pretty well versed in virtual asset space. 80% of the financial advisors, they were pretty skeptical. They know either nothing about like how crypto assets work, or like how blockchain works, or like very little. 84% of them, of the advisors, said did not have any kind of cryptocurrency. 92% of them mentioned that they're just generally not supporting this cause. 44% of them, they believe that Bitcoin is just a speculation and not a real investment. And it is very important because those people, they have access to a lot of money, and their clients they're typically like institutions and or high net worth individuals, right? Family offices. So before the event, think about it. Before the event, it was 96% of the participants who they finished the survey and they mentioned that they're very skeptical. After, they introduced them into a course, a crash course into virtual assets and digital assets. And after the event, 89% of the advisors, they had a positive view on crypto assets. 91% of they might stop.
That's impressive.
Yeah. So again, this is the situation we're in. Like, people, they're not necessarily negative about it. I think they just don't have like enough information. That's I would say my biggest takeaway from this. Like, people start mentioning that 82% of them said that they're starting matching to their clients and to diversify portfolio, and they're happy about it now. But you see, it takes time. We're forgetting that this is a very nascent asset class. We're only 10 years. Like, this is not something that is going to happen overnight. We need to, as an industry, consolidate our efforts to educate clients, investors, everyone who's participating in this space.
And talking about investors again, what do you think are the main challenges the investors are facing at the moment? And what are the challenges you might have faced yourself in this regard as an investor?
Well, again, coming back to the same matter, I think, again, a lot of them, they just don't have enough knowledge. So they need guidance, they need help, they need help to understand what are they really investing in, what are the risks, because it's always a risk reward logic that we're in any investments we're doing, whether it's a traditional investment in real estate or like, I don't know, stocks or bonds, or we're talking about crypto assets. We do understand that crypto assets are like, they're more volatile and they're more risky. And but now what's happening, which is I consider a very interesting paradigm shift. The challenges are they are becoming on a different level also on investor protection, right? So even people who are interested in the space, they're trying to read more, they're trying to understand more on their own, and they read all these fancy articles in Forbes or Bloomberg, how many scams and ICOs they've seen, right? Initial coin offerings, which were like, a good idea as a crowdfunding methodology, I would say, but a disaster in terms of how it was performed. And I think, again, education, number one, investor protection, and in the context that every fund who is talking to their clients, I think they need to make sure they understand the risks. It's a fiduciary responsibility of any fund manager or any person like who's issuing the digital security or any token whatsoever. They need to explain the downside of it, potential downside of it, right? It's good to have it in the disclosures in their private placement memorandum or any other subdocs, but it's different when you're trying to break it down in simplified words. What are the potential risks? I would say, yeah, that's one of the issues. And the third one is, I think the challenges are also, again, the reputation of the industry is suffering from the bad actors, people who are trying to impersonate the experts, who are trying to say that, they can help you with everything, legal, tax, investment advices. And at the end of the day, how are you able to verify that? The industry is very young. We have only few people who actually have capital markets, expertise and or legal and tax. Again, it's getting more of this people like in the space, but there are others like who are tech savvy or they're whatever blockchain savvy. We can say like they understand the technological aspect, but they might not necessarily give you the best investment advice. So you need to understand, like, who are you speaking to?
It's very interesting regarding advisors. You mentioned that a lot of real financial advisors, consultants from the traditional finance world, they're pretty skeptical still. But at the same time, they're just on LinkedIn, I think as of March 2019, there are 75,000 people who state themselves as SEO advisors. And in majority of cases, these are people who were former, as ICO advisors. But can you share what the requirements of an advisor for a security token offering really should be in order to prevent fraud and scam?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we've talked about it before, right? So if you go to LinkedIn, there's a lot of people who are trying to say I'm an ICO, I'm an STO advisor, which is probably 90% of the cases is not 100%. Like, they're even, I don't know how their more responsibility is allowing them to say something like that, but it's fine. Instead of requirements, I would love to focus on something like, how do you actually verify this? That's the biggest issue that we have. Imagine that you match all the requirements. You have whatever, as a financial advisor here in the US, you might have Series 7, you might have Series 65, whatever series, like, FINRA registered. Okay, so there's official website, FINRA Broker Check, where you can go and double check whether any certification of a person is matching what of the information provided. Moreover, if you're a part of a bigger group like a broker dealer, like who's known in the industry, you actually have to disclose all your communications. So if you will try to engage me, imagine I'm an advisor and I'm in a part of a big firm, right, and whatever Fidelity, let's say, right, and you want to engage me in investment advice, and you write me an email, doesn't matter, my professional, personal, I actually have to go back to my firm and disclose that I had this communication with you. So you see, in traditional world, there's a lot of requirements, and it's an open source information, tons of info on Investopedia, etc. In our space, which is digital asset space, there's no standards. So that's why, for example, and ABOTMI, the projects, I'm engaged in, I think I'm excited about it because it's actually providing this verification tool. We want to basically introduce this KYA, and know your advisor. We want to make sure that anyone who registers on the platform, we will verify their identity. So number one, as in any investment process, you have to go through KYC-ML, which is know your customer, and anti-money laundering. You want to make sure that that the person, if you say that I'm a Constantin Kogan, so my documents, my driver license or my passport should probably say the same information, which, by the way, it's not always the case. Like we've seen crazy where people were just defrauding their investors, or they're even running companies, being like, in prison in other countries, changing their name and last name, then coming back to US and opening a new company on their new name. And guess what? There is no digital footprint. So you kind of, okay, that's a new person. Why don't I trust him? So this is a big thing. It's all about online reputation. Right now, we don't have a lot of tools to prove your digital identity. So you can, again, If you want, even if you're a successful project, let's imagine you raise $20 million somewhere in the United States, and you want to go and find partners or find another way to distribute your product in Asia, right? So the way the industry works, you would probably ask an opinion or an advice from a friend who you think he knows someone there, right? So in Asia, someone in Japan, someone in South Korea. So it's a word of mouth introduction. Then you have zero understanding how credible this person in, let's say, in Japan is. Like, you just trust your friend, right? Because he puts his reputation on stake. And sometimes it happens a lot in the industry that they also don't have proper information. They don't do enough due diligence. They just trust people. As you know, it's purely psychological game. We want to trust other people, like, which is fine again, but you have to trust your peers, and in business to double check them. So we introduced this layers of verification where you build your online reputation, and you kind of try to build it like and share it and manage it like, so that anytime I engage with you, so you imagine you're an investor, I'm a digital asset advisor, you will actually provide me a review. You will actually rate me, and I will be rated by in a peer-to-peer manner, so that I cannot buy it, for a few ether. I cannot fake it. I will actually have a genuine review. Because guess what? The platform will verify our relationship on a business level. This is number two. Number three, again, I think there is a big discussion right now how to transform even the financial advisors who are interested in the space. There's 1.3 million financial advisors in the United States. They control billions of capital. So they would love to get into it, but again, coming back to our conversation, there's lack of education. So you need to somehow provide them a course and a certification so that they'll be more prone to advise something to their clients. So this is number three. And I do believe that, when you put together all those components, that's the way to, to first of all, protect your investors. That's, again, in a very simplified manner, how I would be able to explain it. There's a lot of other interesting ways how you can do that. Yeah.
And if we take a look at a slightly different perspective, like right now, there are a lot of projects that are related with tokenization in general, and lots of projects that are not really high quality. And that's why we see, like this waiting period where industry players are not willing to come in because they don't have this trust. And basically what you described with your solution, it kind of solved it, but like from another perspective. But what is needed in general to bring more this like institutional trust into the industry, not only the advisors and professionals who work there, but in the level of companies and in the investment opportunities it provides?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to is the institutional interest, which is obviously it's there already, like, again, but it's more of curiosity rather than the direct participation. So we've heard a lot of hype behind, like Yale Endowment and Harvard Endowment recently made a first direct investment in one digital asset project. So I think, I will not reinvent the wheel. Like, it's very simple. Regulatory framework, for example, in the U.S. we have Wyoming, which is a leading state, who is, they have a blockchain association, which is working, like, they do tremendous things. They passed, like, recently several bills, that helped, to legitimize, the digital assets in the state. But then we need a federal level, like in the United States, where it's going to be accepted on a different layer. You need a simple unity and consolidation between the SEC, CFTC, and FINRA, and because now we kind of have a bit of confusion, like who's interpreting digital assets, how, they all have different interpretations. So it's a separate topic, but I think that's important. More qualified custodians. That's very important because it's a big question how these assets will be held, and institutional players want to make sure that there's a bulletproof solutions. You know, it's not like in ICO world where you have it on cold storage and then you can go to Bermuda and disappear, right? So that's now how billions will flow into the industry. The third layer is obviously, I would say, yeah, investor protection, where we're going to have a credible source, like a standardization of the players in the market, and obviously educational piece of it. So we, for example, we integrated White Collar Bear into our platform, which is an educational project, and they provide, you know, the basics of crypto assets, how to invest, how to store your crypto assets. And I think the same logic will apply to digital assets. It's a bit different process, you know, like, and that's important. If we as an industry will provide all of like the three major points, you know, like, and will actively help, not just talk about problems, but actually introduce solutions. Like there's, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of legal working groups here, like prominent lawyers who are uniting in their efforts to actually provide, you know, some context into Taxonomy Act, into all other bills that will promote the digital assets and help to understand how the cross-border transactions will work. You know, like they're testing, they're having this small sandbox together with the issuance platforms, how the transaction between UAE or between Spain and the United States will happen. You know, how let's say if I'm a credit investor in the United States, whether I'm going to be interpreted as an accredited investor in, let's say, in Spain, right? So there's a lot of there's Chamber of Commerces who are participating in these experiments. I know for a fact that there's more than 14 central banks who are talking about stable coins, and they're actually implementing, like, you know, these projects. I mean, I don't know to tell you, know, about a lot of banks who are filing patents and basically trying to promote this technology. But at the end of the day, it will take time. You know, it's again, it's at very early stages. We're not even in the early. We're probably in the early stage adopters. We're not in the mainstream yet. Yeah.
It all goes down to trust, to instruments that can provide opportunities for like to trust people, to be credible, to check them, to educate people, and that's what matters. And it seems like that's exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's very important to know who you're dealing with. I think there's a generally, you know, the internet, like with the open source technology, it provided a lot of benefits in communication and the information flow. Now you can go to Wikipedia, like, or even Everpedia, like, and actually get any information about anything you want. But then it comes back to the question, what is a source, you know, like, and what is a legitimate information, what is not? And it's a big debate right now, because now if it's an open source, you can basically provide any information you want, right? And there are algorithms that try to double check the information and verify them, but with people is different. You see, like with people, you can list in your LinkedIn that you graduated from Stanford. Right. I mean, if I wouldn't know you personally, I would say, okay, yeah, why not? They're smart. Why not? That's the thing. Like, and it's not a big issue, but it will confuse people who will talk to you, because then, let's say Stanford grads, you know, like they will try to contact you and say, hey, we're also alumni from Stanford. Let's chat. And smart people who understand how social engineering works, they use it to their own benefit. And there's a big debate right now, for example, also in Telegram, right? People can fake others' accounts, and unfortunately, Telegram does not provide the tool. That's a downside of technologies we have, but at the end of the day, I'm very positive about current. I think it's an evolution. You know, like we're just, again, we're in baby steps, and we're starting to get mature as an industry. It's going to take time, but again, I really respect all the people who are, putting their, efforts and sweat and blood, like practically to provide solutions. And, we are excited to introduce this infrastructure to the industry. We're happy to partner with people who are legitimate, and we already have great partners on our partnership page. And I believe that's the next level of comfort and trust we have to build as an industry.
Thank you very much for being with us. It was our pleasure.
Thank you so much.
This was Constantin Kogan for Value.Tokenized. Thank you for watching.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to our Twitter, and we'll see you next time.